Hi there, welcome to my channel. My name is Charlotte and I am Kalnitsky Knits because my last name is Kalnitsky, and I'm coming to you from Winnipeg, Canada, which is essentially the center of Canada. We're not that well known, but we're in between Toronto and Vancouver. So if you're from Canada, you probably know where we are. If you're from somewhere else in the world, situating you halfway between Toronto and Vancouver would give you a pretty good idea. It's spring here. The sun is out. It's windy like crazy. I can still actually wear some of my warmer knits, although that's going to be it's going to end quite soon. And I wanted to come on here. I've been knitting for about 5 years. I started seriously knitting during COVID when, like a lot of people did, and the world closed down and people were looking for things to do, as was I. I had just retired a couple of years before that and had kept myself busy doing other things. But once the world shut down, I decided I should maybe start knitting. I am retired. And between my husband and I, we share 4 children. Two are mine, 2 are his, and they're just getting to be the ages where they're starting to think about having children. And when I started knitting, I thought that might be happening soon, and that was sort of my impetus to some extent, because I thought, well, I'll have people to knit for shortly enough. And sure enough, right now we have a 3-year-old, a 2.5-year-old, and a newborn coming in May. So that's 3 grandchildren to knit for, and I've been enjoying it like crazy. I also wanted to come on here because one of my favorite things to do is to watch different podcasters when I knit, to kind of to veer away from the YouTube videos that make me feel a little like I have my hair on fire. All the political stuff going on is seriously making me want to scream a little bit. If you don't know, we have an election coming up shortly next week, 2 weeks. Early voting is this weekend, so we'll get a chance to do that, and hopefully it will work out in a way that supports all people and values all people. And so I guess that's also one of the reasons why I wanted to come on here and meet other people who are like me. I think at least the podcasters that I watch, the knitting podcasters, they're typically quite careful to not talk about or not mention politics. And while I can appreciate politics are a very touchy subject, and I don't really care, if you're interested in this much money on a bridge or that much money on taxes, I do really care about humanity and treating everybody as equal human beings, and regardless of color of skin or where you came from or what your sexual preference is or what your stance is on abortion rights. I think everybody has a right to their own opinion and to be able to speak out about that opinion. And so that isn't necessarily a popular view, at least it doesn't seem to be in the US right now. And I've watched a lot of podcasts that I quite enjoy. And I have to say, at this point, with everything that's going on, it kind of bothers me a tiny bit that I don't know where they stand on some of these issues, because quite frankly, I prefer to support people who share the same belief systems, not to share the same politics, but at least respect those belief systems and agree on a common truth and agree on certain things. And so at least the podcasters that I've seen don't really say anything about that, and so they try and keep that all out of the discourse. But I think now more than ever, I think we need to feel confident and really stand up and make it clear that there's a whole group of us that really do care about all those things, and stop being so polite about it, because politics are one thing, human rights are something completely different. Anyway, if that's something, if I'm not the kind of person that you would necessarily have a conversation with, then if we were at a coffee shop or, if we met at a party, then that's absolutely fine. You can scroll past me and not stay. But if you share the same beliefs that I do, then I want to say that's where I am on the side of the fence. And if you are too, then please join me and let's talk about knitting and maybe some of the craziness that's going on in the world. Hopefully not dwell on that too much, because I feel like this is knitting has sort of been I feel like I was laying in bed last night thinking, it's like I'm stitching my way to stitching my way to sanity. And so I don't want this podcast to be all about politics and hair on fire and what's going on. I want this to be my escape, but I also want it to be my escape with people who feel a lot like I do. So that is that. I did only start knitting 5 years ago. I have one of my daughters is both of my daughters are in their 30s. And when I had my first, when I was pregnant with my first, I knit a little bit, but nothing of any real consequence. And then life got busy and I had to work and all those other things. And so I didn't really ever feel like I had enough time. And I didn't have anybody in my life who taught me how to knit. I will say that I was born in Czechoslovakia. And aside from being a woman, I definitely feel privileged in the fact that I'm white and nobody would know that I'm, wasn't born here, came from another country. And I'm super grateful for Canada and how it treats its immigrants. And so in some respects, parts of my life were rather difficult. My parents came with a 4-year-old in tow and made a good life for themselves. And I was able to take that on even further. Anyways, and I guess that's partly why I feel like now is not really the time to be really quiet and stand aside and not mention political affiliation or those kinds of things, because I came from a country that was, the tanks rolled in, the Russian tanks rolled in, and my parents felt like they were forced to flee. So it keeps happening. And I'm not going to pretend that it's not. And I'm not going to pretend that I'm not on a side, because I absolutely am. So anyway, elbows up, Canada. And if you're with me or you agree with me or you support me or people in Canada, I have a lot of American friends who I adore, and they feel very much like I do. And I will absolutely support and be kind to anybody who comes here with an open heart and willing to learn from each other and share experiences and talk about knitting and not hate on other things. Anyways, so I'll try to sort of keep this to a standard podcast. What I'm wearing is the very famous Ranunculus. It is made out of Lamb Kid's I was calling it diamond, but it's not really diamond. Maybe it is diamond. I have a link below. Diamond Lane Downy fingering. It's a really, really luscious alpaca cashmere elastane. So it has some incredible drape. I was quite late to the Ranunculus game, probably because I don't tend to gravitate towards round. Whoops, sorry. The cat's in the back here. Get. I don't tend to gravitate towards round yolks. I find that oftentimes it could very easily be me, but I just find oftentimes that the body ends up being way too wide and sort of balloons out. This one doesn't, and I'm not sure if it's because I made it the right size or because of the fabric that this yarn makes, which is incredibly luscious. I had initially ordered 2 skeins, and so the sleeves were they're still a little short for my liking, but I do love it. Um, my mom, who is still alive and lives just a 20-minute drive from me, saw this sweater and was over the top crazy about this color and the pattern. And I don't know that I've ever had that sort of response to anything I've knit before. So that was rather surprising, but I do agree with her that the color is something else. I don't usually gravitate towards such bright colors, but I'm beginning to think it actually suits me, right? Like it brightens me up. I needed something happy, and this fit the bill, and it was a quick knit, and I'm quite happy with it. So anyway, so to make my mom's day, I actually contacted Lamb Kid and asked them if they would do a dye order for me so that I could make my mom a ranunculus, and they were kind enough to do a special dye order, and I ordered it and it came a little while ago. So I have 3 skeins this time to make sure that I can have the sleeves as long as she needs. Excuse me. And I know my body is a bit longer. I'll stand back here so you can see. The body on mine is quite long. I don't really like it cropped. I don't generally wear cropped sweaters very much, at least not without something underneath them. And this, unfortunately, is a little too snug, and it just sort of bunches up anything I have underneath. Maybe a tank top would work, but anyways, I don't wear anything underneath this, and it's amazing. So that's what I'm knitting. Sorry, what I'm wearing, and also what I'm knitting. So I mentioned that I'm going to make my mom one of these, but in the interim, I also have one that I'm working on. Again, in a color that I wouldn't necessarily have picked, but I thought I could do something sparkly. I don't know if you're picking up that sparkle. I had 2 skeins of this beautiful Touch Possum Yarn that I picked up when we were in New Zealand. My stepdaughter lives in New Zealand, and so we were there a couple winters ago, and I picked up this beautiful chartreuse yarn that has merino, and I think it's merino. I'll link that below. But it's also got possum in it, which I thought was kind of interesting. And because I have 2 skeins, I also picked up some Isager fine alpaca silk and yak to hold with it, to give it some fluff. And of course, wasn't sure how this would look, and the yellow, I feel like, sort of brightens it back up, gives it a bit of shine, and gives it this really beautiful sparkle. It's not in your face, it's a little subtle. If you hang out here long enough, you'll see that I'm really loving sparkle. I'm a little nervous to use it without fluffy yarn. I think partly because I'm a little worried that it will get itchy. But it hides really nicely in a fuzzy yarn, so it doesn't scratch, it doesn't feel itchy. Anyways, so yeah, so I'm partway through the body, making my way through here, and I'm not really sure how this is going to fit. I didn't gauge swatch, and now I've changed, of course, the thickness of the yarn by a fair bit. So we'll see if my mom's interested in this one. And I'm lucky in that I have a lot of family members who are always interested in my knitting, and taking it or wearing it or getting it. So it's usually not that difficult to, if I don't care for it and if I'm not crazy about it, somebody else is happy to love it. So yeah, so that works out really well. And just as an aside, how many of you are knitting things a lot for other people? When I watch the podcasters, oftentimes they're knitting a ton for themselves, and I love that. And I think, when I started knitting, definitely I did a lot of that earlier on, although I have to say I also knit some baby blankets as soon as I found out that we were expecting grandchildren. But other than that, and I started with sweaters too, I have to say. I started with little sweaters because I just thought someday we'll have grandkids, and it just felt like it was going to be a little easier to figure out and wrap my head around the patterns and the making of a sweater in a small size. And so that's sort of where I started, and definitely graduated from there fairly quickly. Again, I'm retired, and I'm quite privileged to be retired and to have a lot of time on my hands, and also a little ADHD, so I can hyper focus on things. And anyway, the knitting definitely, as my yarn stash can attest, does get a little out of hand, and I go get a little OCD about it. Anyway, maybe a little too much information, but I'm sure I'm not the only one. So one of the other finished objects that I have that I completely fell in love with, and then this is by a designer that is very famous, Petite Knits. I look at her patterns. For some people, it sounds, when I watch the podcast, it's like a love-hate relationship. Some people love her. Some people have a bit of an issue, or don't really appreciate the fact that she seems to do things in some light, sort of dull, sort of vanilla colors. But I'm starting to really appreciate why that happens, because, you know, things show up beautifully on light colors, especially any sort of textures. And I'll show you what I mean. So I started knitting this for one of the grandchildren, and this you will probably recognize as the Ingrid sweater. I made this with Ancient Art Yarns. I had 4 skeins of the DK Light Worsted stashed away in this beautiful golden retriever yellow color. 2 skeins were very light and pale. And 2 skeins were quite golden. I don't know if you can see, there's sort of a bit of a change right around here. And then sort of the change on the arms, because I started off with one and ended up with the other. And I didn't, it's for a 2-year-old, 1 to 2-year-old. I'm not sure they're going to be particularly picky. But I have to say, you know, I've been doing a lot of knitting, and I'm almost always fairly monogamous, because once I chomp down on something, I find I have a bit of a hard time going back and forth. I do see the value in having a much plainer stockinette stitch sort of at the ready for evening knitting while we're watching TV, but this has been one of my most joyful knits. Anything else that I've knit, I've found that it's just a little, it becomes tedious at some point, or you put it down, or something happens, or it's just, this has been absolutely amazing to work on. I don't know if I would feel the same way making an adult version, and I'm definitely going to make one at some point. But like I said, I have 3 grandkids, 2 here, 1 on the way. And so they're each getting one of these. This is knit, you know, you start from the back, you knit back and forth, you do the short rows, kind of short rows, not really. I mean, you go back and forth, and you create this sort of back shoulder, and then you do this part of the pattern up until here. And then you pick up the left shoulder, and you pick up the right shoulder, you knit down and then join, and then knit to here, join in the round, and then knit the rest of it. And it's just, I can't say enough about it. And the one thing that I also really, really, really loved is I've notoriously, I got hair here now from my sweater. I've notoriously had issues under the arm. Now here you can see there's a little bit of a slip stitch. I don't know where I picked that up. But the other side, I mean, I don't know that any of my underarms in my knitting have ever been that perfect. And I'm bragging because I have a lot of sweaters, a lot. I'm not sure. I think maybe I've knit 15. I'd have to count. Don't quote me on that. But none of them have worked out quite like this. And I think it's partly because when you knit the back, the front, and then join here, you don't have those stitches on hold to get stretched out. So when you pick up the sleeves and knit them in the round, you don't have those holes to account for. Anyway, I love this so much that even though I need to finish my Ranunculus, and I want to finish it, I absolutely do, and I'll have a third one, and I promise I don't just knit those 2 patterns, but I decided that each of the grandkids was going to get one of those sweaters, and so I started another, and this is 3-4 days of knitting, I guess. And so I'm at the bottom part where, you know, I've joined in the round already. And so I'll pick up for the sleeves after, and it just, you know, it's 2-3. This is a bigger size. The yellow one was size 1 to 2 years. This one size 5 to 6. I knit things bigger for the grandkids because I figure they'll grow into it. And then I don't have to worry so much about it fitting them perfectly. And they'll have at least 1 or 2 winters or falls to wear it. Anyway, yeah, I needed to find some yarn that was superwash, that was DK, that had a nice feel to it. This is Irish Artisian yarn. It comes from Ireland. It's in the colorway Carrick-A-Rede. It's 85% superwash merino, 15% Donegal nep, and it's hand dyed. And I mean, it's gorgeous. Next time maybe I'll talk about it has this. I'll talk about my sweater that I made that is made with Brooklyn tweed. And it's my favorite sweater. It's the one I put on around the house. I'm not precious with it because I made it quite large. It's one of my first sweaters that I knit. But it wears like a sweatshirt. It feels like a sweatshirt. And this hasn't been washed yet and it has a similar feel. Anyway, yeah, it's just, my husband says to me, so are you enjoying this one as much as the last one? And I'm thinking, yeah, I absolutely am. I'm not in as much of a hurry. And I feel like this, although it doesn't really look like much, it's definitely quite a few more stitches in the round. So it's taking a bit longer, which I'm okay with. Anyway, yeah, so this one, hopefully by the next time I come on here, I'll have it finished. And yeah, those are the 2 projects that I'm working on currently, that I'm working on finishing. Like I said, I tend to be pretty much a monogamous knitter, so I don't have, you know, a half a dozen things on the go. I just find when I get onto something, I want it done, I want it finished, I want to set it aside, I want to wash it, I want to see how much nicer the yarn is going to feel when I'm done. So I'm always eager to finish it, so I'm in a rush. And once I set it aside, like this one, I'm not I'm not as eager to pick it up. And I think also part of it for me, and you can tell me, does it do that? Do you do that too? I put it on and I felt like the chest was a little bit bigger and rounder, and I was having the problem that I find I have with round yoke sweaters, that it sort of balloons out a little. And so I lost my zest for it a little bit. I mean, I'll finish it. Part of this podcast is also trying to commit and stay on top of projects that I started and want to finish, because I want to come back here and talk about them. Anyway, my goal is to do this once every couple weeks. We'll see how long it takes me to edit this. if you want to check out any of my projects, I don't have these ones on Ravelry just quite yet because they're not done, but everything else that I have, and if you want to look, is on my Ravelry page under CC Nitsky, CCNITSKY. I'll have it in a link below. Or you can follow me on Instagram under cal_knit_ski. And I'll have that down below too. Anyway, yeah, so that is what I'm up to in knitting. And like I said, I'm trying to find a way to sort of stitch to insanity, to stay sane in a crazy world, to not feel like I'm running around with, not feel like I should be running around with my hair on fire, because sometimes it feels really crazy. I'm not sure any time in my life before have I ever been so invested in politics, and now I am. Oh, yes. So the Irish Artisian yarn, I have, like I said, 3 grandkids. And I also have one other family that I knit for quite regularly. They're little people. The adults are a little too much to knit for, I find. There's a lot of, it's the pressure of making a well-fitted garment for adults that I find quite stressful. Which is probably why I haven't started on the other Ranunculus yet for my mother, because as much as, you know, she loves mine, she can't just put it on, and her size is a bit different. She's not going to want it cropped, and I'm not always sure it's going to work out exactly how I want it. And kids don't complain, so, you know, they're happy to wear what you give them, and at least our grandkids are. And my daughter, also one of my daughters, her husband is, he has a sister who has 2 super cute little girls. One's a teenager, but the other one is about 4 or 5 years old. And so I usually knit for her as well. So when I make the grandkids a sweater, I usually make her a similar one. Anyways, so that gives me 4 kids, 4 and a young woman to knit for. So the Ingrid sweater, I have these 3, and I only need 3 to make a size 1, 2. And so I was thinking of making the newborn one in these 2 colors, maybe with cuffs, and see if those go together. I'm not sure. Anyways, I always feel like I should be knitting them the same things or similar things. Not that they're necessarily going to wear them at the same time, but I just always feel like I should be somewhat equitable. Anyway, that's my knitting and some of my knitting plans. And so hopefully I'll have those 2 projects done by the time I come back, and I'll have some more things on my needles, and I'll have something else to show you in terms of what I've made for myself. Maybe it'll be nice enough to wear something sparkly. I have some summery, springy sparkle sweaters, t-shirts that I've made that I quite like. I'm not always the best at finding places to wear them because, you know, I'm not doing dishes or cooking in them, but yeah, sparkle is definitely my jam. So anyway, if I seem like the kind of person that you would like to have coffee with or tea with and sit and chat about knitting and knitting projects, then I'm really glad you're here. If you are feeling like you need to take a little bit of time away from the craziness that is our political reality and insanity, feel free to join me. If I'm not from the same side of the fence as you, then that's fine too. I'm not going to be for everybody, and I'm okay with that. I am totally okay with that. So if you've made it this far, thanks so much for hanging around. Click subscribe if you would like to know and see when my next video is up. You can hit the bell. Again, I'm hoping in 2 weeks I will have something up Having said that, in 2 weeks, I will be in British Columbia for a few days, so maybe I'll take some videos. In the opening, I'm sharing a little bit around our yard. We're adding water to the pool, getting that ready to open. You know, things are budding out there. It just snowed 2 days ago, but everything's melted again, and it looks like summer is actually going to come, so I'm excited. Anyways, thanks for spending some time with me, and I hope we'll chat soon. If you want to know anything more about any of my projects, as I said, go to my Ravelry page. You can find me on Instagram. You can direct message me, or you can leave a comment below, and I would be excited and honored to reply. Thanks so much.